I believe it was Confucius that said, "It is the seeking of happiness that creates unhappiness." Let's talk about it. Driven Mofos, welcome back to another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Michael Mojo. I'm the owner of Mojo Human Performance Institute, where we focus on business, mindset, and lifestyle hacking for driven mofos. All right, legends. Now, I know a lot of you have been jumping across into our Facebook group, which is the No BS Business Hacks group on Facebook. It's absolutely awesome to connect with a lot of you. I've been chatting to some of you, and it's really awesome to hear that a lot of you are listening to the podcast and enjoying it, sharing it with people. I know a lot of you have given ratings and reviews, so I really do appreciate it. And I just wanted to start the podcast with that because, without this community, I don't know what I would do if I couldn't just get out and teach people. I love this stuff. I love teaching and I love sharing information, especially with a lot of the things that I learn along my journey of building my businesses, but also as well being the private coach of a lot of very highly successful people, from rich listers to highly successful business owners, and also a lot of the people that I meet through our events and the journey. And I want to be able to share some of this stuff as well, especially through my coaching journey as well and working with them. So it's been absolutely awesome. So thank you if you are one of those people who have jumped into that free Facebook group as well. And also those of you who are sharing this stuff with other people and are rating and reviewing. So thank you very much, everybody. All right, let's talk about happiness and why I think it is a really shitty metric for life. Now, when I was younger, I used to think that the purpose of life was to be happy. And so I would wake up every day thinking, I'm not happy yet. So therefore, I've got to go and seek this idea of happiness. And at first I thought, getting drunk made me happy because, when I would get drunk, I would go out and party and I thought, wow, life's really happy. But then I'd wake up with a hangover and I'd think everything's fucked and I'm not happy. And then I wouldn't be happy again. And then I'd go, well, I think if I made more money, it would make me happy. And so then I chased money for a long, long time. And I thought if I had more money, I'd be happy. But then I remember making, I think it was about $265,000 a year. This was like 15 years ago when I was a personal trainer. I didn't even know that I'd made that much money. All I knew was that I was broke for the whole year. And then I went to the accountant and the accountant said, wow, you had a really good year. You made $265,000. And I remember looking at him in like disgust. And I was like, what? And he goes, you made $265,000 this year in your business. And I said, no fucking way. And he said, we've gone back through everything. That's the income that you've produced and what you've been paid for. And I said, well, then where the fuck is all the money? Because I didn't have money in the bank. And so I'm thinking, what's going on here? This guy's definitely, on crack. So I realized that I had a huge spending problem. And so I would make money and then just spend it and I would still end up broke. And I thought that, money would make me happy. But every cent that I got, I just spent again because I was trying to buy my happiness. And this happened for a fair while. And then it was that. And then I thought, when I have a successful business, then I'll be happy. And for years I worked on the business and it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And then I remember overnight going from making $800K or something like that. And we had a big event, and that event we did a couple of $100,000 in sales, and it clicked over and I was like, wow, shit, I just became a millionaire. The business had over $1 million in turnover and I went, fuck, this is a dream. And then the next morning I just woke up to a whole bunch of other problems and stresses and shit that I was dealing with. And I was like, right, cool. I need to go keep finding my next idea of happiness, because once again, I'd achieved something that I wanted and I still didn't have this idea of happiness. And it wasn't until I came across the work of Dr. John Demartini, who is a very close friend of mine now, a very, very good friend. Both his daughters, Brisha and Elena, are good friends of mine. Just spending time with him and doing some of his courses and things like that, he made me realize that happiness is a really shitty metric for life. And part of the reason why the majority of people in our society struggle to live a fulfilling life is because they keep chasing happiness. And I believe it was Confucius that said that it's the seeking or the chasing of happiness that actually makes us unhappy, or something along those lines. And it really made a lot of sense. What I realized is that when you're a person who lives out of your emotional centers of your brain, this is a more primitive part of the brain, so it's an older part of the brain, we tend to seek pleasure and we tend to try to avoid pain consistently. Now that might seem obvious, and most people who are listening are probably going, well, no shit, because I want to get out of pain. But what most people don't realize is that our pleasures create our pain. And the more we chase pleasure, the more it creates pain. And the more pain that we have, the more pleasure that we have. And it creates vicious cycles. And it's almost like a pendulum that swings from one side to the other. And the bigger the swing on one side towards pleasure, the bigger the pain on the other side. When I was younger, I used to go out partying and I'd run a market. And I thought that the thing that made me happy was getting pissed all the time. And by pissed, if you're listening, that's a very Australian term, but getting drunk. I would go out on the weekend and I'd just wipe myself out. And like 2:00 in the afternoon, if I could have a barbie with my mates or a barbecue, my mates would come around and we'd all hang out. And I'm thinking, wow, this is cool. And then we'd get the shots out and we're smashing shots. And then we're, seeing how much we can drink. And then by the time I'd go to the city at 8 o'clock at night, I was just absolutely shit-faced. And then, half of the night I couldn't even remember. Even 3/4 of the night I couldn't remember. Then, I'd pick up a girl and take her home and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Then I'd wake up the next morning. I'm like, fuck, I got a hangover. There's someone in my bed. I wish they'd go. The next day I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered. Can't be bothered cooking. Well, fuck it, I'll get McDonald's or I'll eat KFC or whatever. And then I feel shit because I ate crappy food. So my pleasure would create my pain. And then my pain was during the week, I'm going to the gym to try to work off the guilt that I had from the shitty food that I ate, from the alcohol that I'd consumed. Because I perceived, well, I don't want to be fat, so now I got to go and burn all these calories again in order to make myself not feel like shit. So I would have guilt and shame around the food that I was eating. I would feel like crap for a couple of days afterwards with, I'd have a hangover for the majority of the next day. But a lot of the time I'd just go out again the next night and do the same thing again. And like this happened over and over again. And I look back now and I'm like, it was one of the most craziest times of my life. And I really did enjoy it. But at the same time, and it did make me who I am. Like I don't really have a lot of regrets in life because I wouldn't be the person that I am today without doing all the things that I've done in my past. And not all of them, I would say, have been highlights in my life. In fact, there's a dark box of shit that I hope no one discovers. It's just part of life. And I think everyone has that dark box as well. Like being a private coach to a lot of people, and having coached thousands of people, tens of thousands of people over the last 20 years, I know that everyone who's listening to this has a dark box of shit that they hope no one digs up. And it's just part of the way life is, but I don't really have regrets because I think I wouldn't be the person that I am today without doing the dumb shit that I've done. And I wouldn't be the person that I am today without going through and making these mistakes. It's not that I'm ashamed of these things. It's just that they taught me that chasing happiness all the time or chasing pleasure normally leads to pain. And then that pain once again reinforces the need within our brain to want to create pleasure. I talk a lot about this at our Thrive Time event because we do a lot of stuff on mental performance and getting your mindset right and making sure you don't have these mental volatilities all the time and these emotional volatilities and crazy outbursts or shutting down or avoiding things, because a lot of people have that in our society and it doesn't help you to achieve what you really want to achieve in life. I do talk quite a lot about this idea of a pendulum swing and that the more we pull to one side, the more we swing back to the other side. And this is, I guess, what Dr. John Demartini taught me was that every time we seek a pleasure, we create pain. And every time we have pain, we seek a pleasure. And this creates volatile cycles within our life. And so when I started identifying this and looking, I went, shit, part of the financial patterns that I have in my life are around this idea of if I just had more money, then I'd be happy. Now, I wasn't creating wealth because I was pushing myself to create greater wealth. What I thought was that when I get money, then I'll be happy. In that thought process, I had to understand that my idea of happiness came from having money. And that was because I bought shit. Now, if you buy things in order to buy your happiness, then you're going to end up with no money again. And when you have no money again, then you're going to crave money because you think that money is going to make you happy. But when you get money, you go, I've worked hard for this money. I'm going to go buy something that will make me happy. Then when you buy something, you go, shit, I've got no money again. Now I've got to work in this fucking job or doing things that I don't enjoy in order to get money again so that then I can be happy. So again, this is this vicious cycle. I had this pattern really, really bad when I was younger. At school, I was the only kid at the swimming carnival that never took my shirt off because I was ashamed of my body. And I used to feel fat and chubby. I had probably body dysmorphia. Maybe I still do. I don't know. I'm not ripped like I used to be and all that sort of stuff. I guess I look after myself and I train. But as a kid, I think I used to look in the mirror and just see this fat kid. And I had white pasty skin and freckles and bright red hair. And I used to get picked on a lot. And so I remember being at the grade 5 swimming carnival and everyone had their shirt off, even kids way fatter than me. And I'm sitting there with a fucking t-shirt on swimming in a swimming pool because I just didn't enjoy the way that I looked. What would happen was because of my pain of feeling like shit, I started training at around 14. Now my dad used to lift weights and we had weights in the house. So I thought, fuck it, I'll start training. And I started lifting weights. What I didn't realize was it actually created one of my highest values, which is exercise and physical movement. When I would start to get good results, I would sabotage those results by binge eating, by overeating, by consuming too many calories, because I'd call them cheat meals. And so I would just binge out. But what the binging was doing was it was creating pain. That pain then would force me to do what I really enjoyed, which was exercising. And I thought when I exercise, then I'm burning off these guilt and these calories, which was getting rid of my pain. But then when I'd start to get good results again, I would just go out and overeat shit because I would start to become lazy and I'd become a bit complacent and go, oh, I missed the gym today, it'll be fine. But in my brain, it's like, no, fuck you, you enjoy the gym. I'm going to unconsciously make you go back to the gym. So when I would start feeling good about myself, my eating would turn to shit again. And I'm like, what the fuck? I would wake up the next morning and I'm like, I gotta go burn off these calories again. So I'm at the gym at 5:30 in the morning on the fucking exercise bike trying to burn an hour's worth of calories. And then, in the afternoon, I'm doing a weight session again because I felt like I had to burn off those calories. But that was this vicious pendulum swing that I had inside of my own psychology in the more primitive part of the brain called the amygdala, which makes us seek pleasure and avoid pain. Now, unfortunately, the whole psychology model, or the majority of the psychology model that is taught, that humans move towards pain and they move away from pleasure. In fact, the majority of the coaching industry, I would say 99.999% of the coaching industry, still teaches that methodology. That methodology is a primitive way of thinking. Part of the problem of this is that a lot of research that comes out around the brain and the way that the brain works is done with mice. Now, mice don't drive cars. Mice normally don't worry about what the time is. Mice, they do build houses or whatever they fucking build, but they sure as shit aren't out there putting up skyscrapers. So humans are way more evolved than those animals. And although they have similar brain structures and they respond in certain ways that researchers can use, by using mice or by using rats or by using monkeys as research, we're skipping one of the most essential parts of what makes someone highly successful. And this is the thing that I've found, and I've really struggled with this over the last 10 years of working, or 11 years in working in human behavior and optimizing human performance, is there's not a lot of research out there around what makes someone perform at their best. Because a lot of the data that's been out there has all been around what works with mice, what works with rats, what works with other rodents or rabbits, also what works with monkeys. Now, they aren't as evolved as humans. Humans have this beautiful part of the brain called a prefrontal cortex or an executive center where we can start to think about things. We have this thing called metacognition. And with metacognition, we can actually think about what we're thinking about and change our thoughts. We can also change the way that we feel. We can also govern our emotional states. A lot of other animals can't do that. They can learn things. And so part of the research is, well, if they can learn things, then that's like humans. But it's not really. It's like comparing a bus to a car or a bus to a Ferrari. Like, yeah, they got 4 wheels and they got a fucking bunch of windows and shit. But they're not the same thing. Humans are way more evolved. Although, I have met plenty of humans out there that I don't think have the mental capacity that is as evolved as, other people. No offense to that, but there are definitely plenty of people out there who are very primitive in their thinking. Some people, it's their choice of lifestyle that causes that. Actually, I'd say that's most people. A lot of the people that I get to meet, and if you're listening to this, it's probably because you have metacognition. You're probably aware that there are problems. You're aware of what you're thinking about. You're aware of your emotions. You probably have the ability to go, I'm angry and I'm frustrated, but I can control this shit. That's because you have metacognition and you're using that prefrontal cortex. And so our prefrontal cortex governs our emotions. It governs our impulses. It can make us analyze our fears. And so it allows us to grow. The problem that I've had is that the research out there is very hard to back a lot of the stuff up that I have, because the majority of research hasn't really studied mental performance. It has studied how animals respond in certain environments. It also tends to look at mental health issues, which are problems. It doesn't really optimize performance. And what I've found, and I know this is going to be highly controversial for some people, and I'm probably going to piss some people off, but it is what it is. It's my truth of what I found, is that people normally have problems when they don't have a better solution. People normally have mental problems when they're not achieving the things that they want. So one of the best things that I've ever found, and that I work with consistently in my events that have helped tens of thousands of people, has been that if you can help someone really define what they're trying to achieve and give them the tools to do that, mental health problems take care of themselves. Most people have mental health problems because they're beating the shit out of themselves, comparing themselves to others. They're not where they want to be in life. They're really frustrated with themselves, and they're dealing with, I guess, a system that reinforces people's problems. And so when you go to a therapist and a therapist says, tell me about your problems, and you talk about your problems all the fucking time, and then you go, shit, I've got to go to the therapist again. I better think about what my problems are. You're essentially training people to reinforce their problems. I found this out years ago when I was working with clients. And what I noticed was that I would coach someone, and every time I would coach them, they just have fucking problems. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Why every time do I come in, do they just seem like they have more problems? And then I started asking them questions like, what have you been doing well? How have you been implementing this stuff? And they'd go, oh yeah, I've been doing great. I've been doing it. And I go, well, why is it that every time you come to sessions, you're talking about problems? And they go, well, I thought that's what these sessions are for. And so what I didn't realize was that when you consistently discuss problems with people, it reinforces them wanting to talk about problems. Now, a lot of the time, I start my coaching sessions with what are we here to achieve? And also, what have you achieved since our last session? What have you been working on? What's been working well? And then what can we improve upon? And so I come at it from a more balanced perspective. And what it does is it helps people to achieve things in a way different way. But coming back to this idea of happiness, is that this pendulum swings inside of our brain because it's more of a primitive response, and it's trying to avoid fear, and it's trying to move towards food. Now, all animals at their most core desire need safety and security, and then it needs food and sex and procreation. So when we go back to it, our fear response, and anytime we have a fear response, will counterbalance itself with an impulse. So if someone has a really shit day at work and you're driving home, you might be driving home and your brain starts going, I just need a beer. 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 And you start thinking about beer, or you start thinking about chocolate, or you start thinking about KFC, or you start thinking about McDonald's, or you start thinking about doing something that's impulsive. I just need to buy some shit. The reason why it does that is because anytime our brain has a fear, it creates an impulse. And that impulse causes us to try to seek pleasure, which counterbalances the pain inside of our brain. Now, most people don't even know this. They've never even analyzed it. But every time I work with someone who's impulsive, it's normally because they're trying to get away from a fear. I don't deal with the impulse, I deal with the fear. And once you crack the fear and balance out the fear, it automatically deals with the impulse. I know that if I've had a really shit day, I start craving chocolate. I don't crave alcohol. I used to, but I don't anymore. Now, how does this relate to the idea of happiness? Well, normally when people are consistently seeking happiness and that becomes their metric for life, it will automatically make them unhappy because they'll start comparing what they don't have to what they're trying to achieve. I think that it's a really shitty metric for life. And I hear so many people on an average week that I talk to, or that I hear just in general, that are just like, I just want to be happy. I just wish I was more happy. You know, the purpose of life is happiness. No, that's how you fuck up your life if you're an intelligent person that wants to achieve great things. Happiness is not a metric for life. It's a shitty metric. It's like trying to grow a business by Instagram followers. Like, that's a shitty metric because you can have millions of followers and have no money and be broke. But you can also have 100 followers and make a shit ton of money if all of those 100 followers give you $10,000 each. It's not a good metric. It might be okay, but it's not a great one. What I would recommend is that you base your life based on an idea of fulfillment. And your idea of fulfillment comes from understanding your values so clearly that you prioritize your life based on your values. So right now, am I happy doing this podcast? No. But am I unhappy doing my podcast? No. Am I fulfilled doing it? Fuck yeah, because this is what I love to do. And when we look at the idea of love, love is a balance between two polarities. So when you love your kids, you know that they're both your dream and your nightmare. When you're in love with your partner, your intimate partner, it's not passion, it is love. And that means that you understand them better than they understand themselves in most cases. And you understand what drives them. And sometimes the thing that drives them, you laugh at because you know that it is so crazy and so volatile. You're just like, I get them. That's the same with normally parents when they describe their kids. Now, I'm not a parent, so I can't say that, but I just know human behavior. And what I know is that all parents that love their kids know that they're both their dream and their nightmare. That's love. A passion, on the other hand, the word passion means to suffer. So if you look at the etymology, which is the history of the word, the original meaning of the word passion is to suffer. And the reason why we suffer when we chase our passions is because we're going for something that's supposed to be exciting and fun and make us happy. And it creates this polarity to one side. And at extremes, it swings back the other way and also causes suffering. Following your passions isn't a good thing, but it's not a bad thing. It's just something that people do. Like normally if someone's chasing their passions, it's because they're excited and they think that everything's going to go well. And they think it's going to get them away from pain, when normally it's going to create their pain. I'm not passionate about my business. I love running a business, and I love running a business because it creates all my emotions. Some days I'm happy, some days I'm unhappy, some days I'm stressed, some days I feel like I'm winning. And that's why I love it, because it gives me all these different amazing experiences every fucking day, moment by moment. And that's what I love about it. I know I'm going off track, but I think that this conversation is so important because so many people base their life on a metric of happiness, and it's a fucking shitty metric. Whereas if you're driven by growth, if you're driven by fulfillment, and fulfillment comes from growth, which is how I respond to things, I think that if I'm growing most days and I'm overcoming obstacles and I'm taking on bigger challenges and I'm becoming a better version of myself, whether that's good, bad, whether it's excited, whether I'm feeling shit, all of those things are, I think, a great experience of life. And so for me, that's highly fulfilling. But am I happy? No, because I don't even use it as a metric. And I've just noticed that over the years as well, people come up to me and they're like, you're a happy dude. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And they can't get it. Like most people can't get it. But it's because they've lived in their amygdala their whole life, which is the emotional center. And so they base their life based on their emotions, not based on their logic. And logic is the part of the brain that stabilizes. When we're logic, it stabilizes our emotions. And that means that we get to live a more stable life, we get to live a more fulfilling life, and we get better results long term because we're consistently achieving things, not because we're getting swung in this pendulum of happiness and unhappiness and pleasure and pain and good and bad. And all these impulsive sort of fucking things that we have, and fear and worries and concerns that go on. All of those things drive each other and they just create these volatilities. And this is the reason why a lot of people have vicious cycles in life. Those vicious cycles are telling you that you're living in your amygdala and your emotional center, and your decision-making skills are based on emotion, not based on logic and intelligent thinking. And this is the reason why at my Thrive Time event, I've spent the last 8 or 9 years putting so much research into that event. I guarantee it is one of the best human behavior events on the planet, because I don't jump around like fuckheads trying to high five. I don't get people to jump around, high five each other and, get all amped up, because what I know is that causes people to crash afterwards and beat the shit out of themselves, and it ruins their self-worth over time. Just most people don't realize it because they like the high, they just don't like the low. Just like a drug addict loves the hit, but they just don't like the come down. Just like the alcoholic loves the drink, but they don't like the hangover. Same as the person who's broke loves spending money, but they don't like not having any money. All of those things are vicious cycles that are created from not controlling your amygdala and not really thinking through things effectively with your executive center and your executive function in your brain. So Thrive Time is all about how do we get you up into that and then govern all that stuff, and then putting all the steps in place of having clear direction, clear focus, understanding what fulfills you, understanding what your lifestyle balance needs to look like, and then putting all the things in place to achieve that, and then also making sure that you've got the tools to stay on top of your emotions so that you don't keep having those volatile cycles. For most people who attend that event, it's a game changer. It'll change their life forever. For other people who come along and never do any work and just sit there like a fucking mute and don't do anything, they don't get results, but we very rarely get them. I freak them out too much with my podcast and my social media. So anyway, Driven Mofos, I hope this helps. If you're one of those people out there and this stuff's resonating, either grab your ticket to Thrive Time and come along. Just realize that the metric for happiness is not a good metric. And, Confucius, as I mentioned, supposedly said it thousands of years ago, where it's the chasing of happiness that creates unhappiness. So I think just using a different metric and understanding how to use your brain better and how to think through things differently will change your life and will make life way more fulfilling. Even though back when I was younger, I used to have so much excitement, like partying hard, drinking all the time, lots of girls, lots of crazy wild sex and all of that sort of shit. Like, that was fun, but it also had massive negative consequences and didn't really help me. It helped me at the time because I was young and I was crazy. Do I want to live that lifestyle now? No way. I have no desire to live that life, because it just creates so many problems and so many other issues that, back then I look at now and I'm like, it's just time wastage. I'd rather do other shit that's way more fulfilling. I'd rather go and hang out with good people and have a good meal, or I'd rather just get work done and feel like I'm doing something purposeful and meaningful with my life, instead of trying to avoid all the problems and the stresses and the frustrations and then keep wishing that I had more happiness. Driven Mofos, I hope this helps. I really appreciate it. And remember, if you haven't joined our Facebook group, the No BS Business Hacks for Driven Mofos, jump across in there. It's free to join, and I'm posting content daily. I look forward to chatting to you in there. Remember, Driven Mofos, never underestimate the dream. Keep pushing hard.